Monday and Wednesday. I will open the midterm on Blackboard earlier in the morning. On Monday, I will open the midterm part 1 on Monday 8 a.m. and it will automatically submit and close at 11:59. And also on Wednesday, I'm gonna post part 2 on Blackboard also, and the time will be exactly the same. It will be open at 8 a.m. and it will be closed at 11:59 p.m. at that night. Make sure you spend some time to do the midterm. After the due date, I cannot reopen it. Okay, the midterm and the quiz, I cannot reopen the midterm and quiz because once I reopen it, the student who already submit it have to redo it. So make sure you spend some time to do the midterms. If you do have some emergency issue that you cannot come to take the exam, for example, you have some internet issue or you have some emergency issue, make sure you send me an email so I can schedule you to take the midterm another time. Okay, so today we're going to learn chapter 17. Okay, let's see. Okay, so in chapter 17, we're going to talk about the wage determination. If you still remember, in chapter 16, we talk about the demand for resource. And in chapter 16, the demand for resource we talk about is the demand for labor. So once you know the demand for labor, how can you decide how you're going to pay for the labor? And that's what we're going to cover in this chapter, talk about the wage determination. In this chapter, we're going to talk about under the two market model, the pure competition market model and the monopoly market model, how can a company to decide what wage rate they're going to pay for their employee. Okay, so this is chapter 17. We only talk about two market model, the pure competition market model and monopoly. So the labor, wage, and earning. As we mentioned before in chapter 2, when we talk about the circular flow model, the household is the people who sell the resource on the resource market, and the business, the company, is the part that buy the resource from the resource market. And in order to buy the resource from the resource market, the companies and the business need to pay wage to the household. So the wage is the price that pay for the labor. The wage may including the directly paid plus the fringe benefit. The fringe benefit including the vacation and health insurance, like this kind of thing. And the wage rate tells you how much money you can earn per hour or per day. Sometimes it's per month. Normally, the wage rate, if you sign a contract with a company, normally the wage rate is per year, annually wage rate. And whenever we talk about wage, we have two types of wage. The first type of wage is what we talk about the nominal wage. It's the actual amount of money received per labor time. The nominal wage is the wage is exactly number that show on your contract. Okay, so this is the number that show on your contract. And this is actually the nominal wage is before tax. Okay, and all other like the nominal wage is the money you receive on your contract. So the nominal wage is before tax, before your pension, before your health insurance, those kind of things. So after you minus all the tax, the thing you need to save in your retirement plan, the thing you need to pay for your health insurance, after you minus those kind of things, that's what we talk about the real wage. Okay, so at here, the nominal wage, okay, once you minus these things after tax and after like the pensions, okay, and then minus the health care, okay, and then this is how you get the real wage. Okay, the real wage is the actual money after you pay everything. After you pay everything, okay, that's the exact money that in your pocket. And the real wage, you need to consider another very key thing is the inflation. Okay. Because money, the currency, they actually increase value and decrease value a lot. When it's inflation, which means the money, the dollar is actually decreasing money. And when it's deflation, which means the money is actually increasing money. So the real wage rate, we're going to talk about the purchase power of the wage. Is talk about how much, how many good stuff you can buy with your actual money in your pocket. And each country, they have their general level of the wage. The general level of the wage is normally equal to the average wage. Okay. I'm not going to test you anything from this slide, so you don't need to worry about anything. I just want to make sure that you understand what is nominal wage and what is real wage. Okay. If you take your macroeconomy right now, you probably already know that whenever you talk about GDP, you have your nominal GDP and you have your real GDP. This is pretty much the same thing, okay, when we talk about the microeconomy right here. Okay. So the next slide, it gives you the basic idea what would be the global perspective of the hourly wage rate. So you see the highest wage rate is in Sweden, is in Europe. Like Germany pay very high hourly payment too. And you see right now the United States actually right here. So it's actually very close to the European companies. So it's actually relative high. It's actually very high in my opinion. Okay. And this is talk about the average of the product worker in the select nation. Okay. And we talk about the average. Okay. This is average. Okay. We cannot using this number. For example, right now, I think this is around $36. You cannot use this compared to the minimum rate. Okay, the minimum rate is actually very low. Okay, for all kind of country. Okay, but however, if you compare United States to Mexico, okay, for example, Mexico right here, I think is around $7. Okay, and Mexico. So that's why a lot of company they choose to plan their industry, their company in Mexico because their labor cost is so low in Mexico. We actually gonna spend some time to talk about United States and Mexico in the next chapter when we talk about international trade. Okay, because in the United States the labor cost, okay, is high, and in Mexico the labor cost is low. So that's why you will see the United States company they're going to plan their industry on Mexico because the labor cost is so low over there. And we're going to talk about how this kind of international trade will have the influence on both of countries' economic. Okay. So the next chapter, the next slide is talk about the role of the productivity. Okay. The labor demand is actually exactly depend on the product demand. We talk about these things last chapter. The labor demand is have a positive relationship with the product demand. So if the demand for product increase, then the labor demand will be increased. And on the other side, the labor based on the productivity. Okay, so this is actually very important. How can you decide whether the labor have a productivity? Okay, you need to know what will be the productivity mean in the labor. So for example, if company A and company B, so company A they're gonna producing 1,000 apples, okay, and company B also you need to producing 1,000 apples. But however, company A compared to company B, company A only have 5 employees. Okay, so what will be the productivity in this case? The productivity in this case, we're using the total production divided by the number of the people. So what we have is 1,000 divided by 5. So what we have, the productivity is equal to 200. And on the other side, company B actually hired 10 people in order to produce in this 1,000 apple. So the productivity in this case, it will be much lower. So it will only equal to 100. So the productivity, we can say the productivity in company A is much higher compared to company B, right? So the labor demand, in this case, you will see company A, they will actually going to, because their productivity is higher. So if they going to hire 10 people, how many apple they can produce? Can anyone tell me? If they increase their labor from 5 to 10, how many apple they can produce in this case? You can type your answer on the chat room, and if you answer correct, I will give you some extra credit. What is the 1,000? Okay, again, the question is like this. Okay, I'm going to repeat the question again. Company A, in order to produce 100 apples, they need to hire 5 people. For company B, in order to produce 1,000 apples, they need to hire 10 people. Okay, so the question is like this: how many apple company A can produce if they increasing their employee amount from 5 to 10? So how many apples right here? How many? Good job. Okay, Tucker, right? Tucker, very good job. Okay, so the answer would be 2,000. How are we going to calculate that? Okay, so this is actually very important. Make sure you understand that. So again, let me clear all these things. So again, for company A, in order to producing 1,000 apples, okay, apples, they only need to hire 5 people. So which means each people, okay, each people can producing 1 people can produce how many apples? We're using 1,000 divided by 5, right? So 1 people can producing 200 apples. So now, if they increasing their employee from 5 people to 10 people, so the total production, we're using 1 people production 200 multiplied by 10. So now they can produce in 2,000 apples. So compared to company B, if company A hire 10 people, their production is actually higher, okay, much higher, and the cost the total cost they pay for the labor is actually exactly the same. So to sum up, the labor demand is depending on the productivity. And for United States, the labor is highly productivity for United States, for the country United States. One of the reasons is because the United States is very rich. It have a plentiful capital, very rich. And United States have access to abundant natural resource, have a lot of resources. Remember, when we talk about resource, we have several resources. When we talk about, we have land, we have labor, okay, and we have capitals, okay. So we have, but in here, when we talk about natural resource, that's when we talk about land. So United States have abundance of natural resource. So which means if we want to buy some raw material, you can directly buy, okay, inside the country, which is much cheaper. And United States have one of the highest advantage technology. The higher the technology, the higher the productivity, the higher the efficiency. And the labor quality in United States also, okay, relative high. It's not very high, it's relative high. And we also have other factors, for example, the government policy, okay, those kind of things, or we have our physical policy. Okay, you should be already learn physical policy on your macroeconomic class, so you should be know that. Okay. So in here, this is telling you that the trend or the increase of the wage rate, the real wage rate increasing from 19th century to 2020 and of this year. You will see, okay, the wage rate will be always increased because the productivity is increasing. So compared to the worker who worked before in 19th centuries, one worker who can produce in the product amount will be much higher compared to the old time because of the technology and because of the capital, the resource what we have right now compared to before is much higher. Okay. So this is telling you the wage rate will be increased. And the next slide, okay, this picture is actually very interesting. Okay, so what does this picture tells you? The top one here, this red line tells you what will be the real hourly compensation. What will be the real hourly compensation? So this is actually the dollar amount the company pay for the labor, and this is the output per hour of the work. Okay, so this is actually the output. So this is the money, this is the cost, okay, for the company, and this is what they get. Okay, so this is what the company get. So if you see before 2007, right here, this is 2007. Okay, the real hourly compensation is actually much higher than the output per work. What does this tells you? Can anyone tell me what does this tells you? What does this tell you? Yes, very good job. Okay, Sarah, very good job. Okay, this tells you the productivity is low, which means the company, they actually pay higher cost to the labor, but however the labor did not, the produce amount, the output amount did not reach the actual required amount. So you will see the difference between the product, the actual cost per hour and the actual output per hour is have a huge gap. And can anyone tell me why in 2017 these things change? 2007, I'm sorry, 2007. Why in 2007 these things change right here? Why? Good job. Okay, Sarah, again, good job. 2007 at end of 2007 and at beginning of 2008, what happened? The great financial crisis happened, right? So what we have here is what we have the 2007 and 2008 financial crisis. I'm sorry, my handwriting is so bad. So what happened in this situation? A lot of companies fire. They fire a lot of employees. And for the people who still did not get fired, they have to work much harder in order to secure their job, right? So that's why you will see, okay, the company fire a lot of employees, and for the people who still get their job, did not get fired, they have to work much harder in order to secure their job. So you will see after 2007 and 2018, the productivity is actually increased, okay, and the company can, okay, yes, pretty much sounds like 2020 right now. Good, yeah, actually very, yeah. You will see in today, in this year, okay, 2020. If you read the news, okay, the COVID-19, the result, the outcome is actually much worse compared to 2017 and 2008. So the economy going to take a huge hit. Okay, so again, I'm kind of sad for this kind of thing happen in 2020. So you will see a lot of companies, they're going to fire a lot of employees. And for the people who still get their job, they have to work much harder. For example, used to they have 3 people to finish the job, and right now because the company fire people, you are only the 1 people to finish the job. So exactly like what you say, that okay, whenever there's a big thing happen, the productivity of the labor will be increased. But however, this is not a very good thing. Again, the productivity, even though the productivity increased, the unemployment rate also increased, which means actually the total GDP is actually going to decrease a lot, even though the productivity increased. But however, the total unemployment rate is actually increased a lot. You will see in this year, United States, they give a lot of money to people. So if you file your tax return last year, and you're probably going to receive a check of $1,200 for you during the next year. Okay, this is the way how the government to help you during this kind of very hard time. So in 2020, pretty much like in 2007 and 2008, it's actually much worse. You need to see this kind of thing in the future. Okay, you're gonna see the economy going to decrease in the future. But please do not be so negative. Okay, even though this is not the actually in 2017 and 2018, what lead to the financial crisis? This is what we talked about. What lead to the financial crisis in 2007 and 2008? It's all about the financial ratios, the data. This is actually because of the economy itself. Okay. But however, in 2020, the COVID-19, this is what we call the nature disaster. This is not related to the economy at all. This is just all nature disaster. So we assume that we're gonna see after 2020, okay, after the COVID-19 get better. So according to the economic, the COVID-19 will be the first period will be end near July. So after July, okay, we will see the first round of the COVID-19 situation will be getting better. But however, after July, you're gonna see people say they're gonna have a second round of the COVID-19 things because the company, the country, they have to open international trade. So you will see again the other country, they will have some bacterial influence. So you will see another wave. But however, the economic will be recover much faster compared to 2007 and 2008 during that time. Even though the number right now is so ugly, but however, still stay positive because you know the economy will be recover a little bit fast compared to 2007 and 2018. Anyway, this is not related to what we talk about today. I'm not going to test you anything from here. Okay. So let's talk about the first market model when we talk about before the pure competition market model. We talk about these things in chapter 10. As we mentioned before, in this whole class, the microeconomic class, I will only test you two market model, pure competition market model and the monopoly market model. So for the pure competition market model, as we mentioned before, the company, they are the price takers, product. At the same time, they are also the wage takers, which means the company have no influence on the wage. The company cannot decide the wage rate. The market decide the wage rate. Okay, so many company. I'm sorry, I see a dog. Many company they're going to compete to hire a specific type of labor. So the wage will be exactly same for all kind of a company. Okay, so for the competitive market model, we already talked about these things. The demand for the labor will be exactly equal to the marginal revenue product for the companies. And the demand of the labor is downsloping. We already talked about these things before. The demand of the labor is exactly the same thing as the demand of the product. It will always a downsloping curve. And there will be a negative relationship between the wage and the quantity demand for labor. Okay, if you still recall in chapter 3, we talk about there's a negative relationship between the product price and the quantity demand for the product. The demand for labor share the exact characteristic to the demand of the product. So whenever the wage for the labor increase, which means the company needs to pay more in order to hire the employees. So their labor demand will be decreased. So they have a negative relationship between the wage and the labor demand. Okay, very easy to understand. And on the other side, the supply, the market supply for labor share the same characteristic with the supply for the product. And because of the law of the supply, then the market supply for labor is an upsloping curve, which means whenever the wage rate increases, the labor will be increased. Okay, this should be very easy. In order to hire more people, the employer needs to pay higher wage rate to attract more people, more workers. So how are we going to decide, okay, for a pure competition market model, how are we going to decide what wage rate should the company set to attract the workers, the employers? So we're using the market labor equilibrium. Okay, we talk about these things in chapter last chapter, chapter 16, and we also talk about these things in chapter 3 also. So still in chapter 3, if you still remember when we talk about demand and supply for the product, so we have a demand curve and we have a supply curve. Okay, so this is supply, this is demand. So once we find the intercept point, so we know that, I'm sorry. Okay, so this is the quantity of the company going to sell, and this is the price the company need to set. And on the other side, in here, in this chapter, when we talk about labor, we also have a demand for labor and we have a supply for the labor. So in this case, the demand for labor in this case is the MRP. Okay. And the supply for the labor is what we call the MRC. As same as what we talked about in chapter 3, in order to find out what will be the wage rate we're going to set, we find the intercept point right here. So right here, what we have, this is the quantity of the labor, tells you how many employees the company is supposed to hire. And at this point, this is what we call the wage rate or the price of the labor. Okay, this is exactly equal to the wage. Okay, it tells you what should the company pay for each of the employees. Okay, so again, to maximize the profit, the company need to hire additional employer if the marginal revenue product is still higher than our marginal resource cost. We talk about these things in chapter 16, so you should be able to know that. And whenever our marginal revenue product is exactly equal to our marginal resource cost, and that's when we have our highest profit. So at this point, this is when we have the highest profit. This is our maximized profit. Okay. Can you explain the least cost rule today? What is the least cost rule? What do you talk about? Anyway, so make sure that you okay. I will talk about the homework after the homework due day. Okay, I will go through the homework question after the homework due day. Okay. So make sure you understand the marginal revenue product and the marginal resource cost right here. Okay. So how are you gonna to decide what wage rate you're gonna to spend for each of the company in the pure competition market model? So we have a market right here. This is the total market. So we have a lot of company in this market. And for each individual firms, okay, so we are talking about a separate individual firm on the right side. So for the market, we have the supply curve and we have the demand curve. And know that our demand curve is the marginal revenue product curve. And once we find the intercept point right here, so we can decide what will be the wage rate for the market. So which means for all the company in this market, for this pure competition market, the wage rate will be exactly equal to 10. So for the individual firms, the wage rate is decided by the market. So the wage rate will be a straight line. It will be a horizontal straight line. It will be equal to 10 because the market decides the wage rate. And once you find the wage rate for the individual company, and each individual company, they have their own demand curve. So once you decide the wage rate, so how many people should the company to hire is depending on the demand of the labor. So once you know the wage, and the company need to make a decision to compare their wage to their demand of the labor. And once you find out the intercept point right here, so this is the each of the company's quantity of the labor, the individual quantity of the labor the company should hire in this case. Okay, should be very, very easy. Okay. Okay. So here, a characteristic of the pure competition market model would be what? Okay, very easy. It would be a wage taker behavior by the firms, as we mentioned before. And the supply curve for labor in the pure competition market model is upsloping because of what? Okay, because of the opportunity cost for the increase of the worker is increased. Okay, and right here, completing the following labor supply for a firm in a pure competition market model for the competitive market model. Okay, so how are we going to decide? So once you see this is a competitive or pure competition market model, we know that our marginal revenue cost will be exactly equal to our wage rate. So in this case, it's always equal to 14 in this case. Okay, this is what we talked about in our last chapter. So you should be able to know that. And the total labor cost, we're just using our wage rate multiplied the quantity. So in here is 0, here is 14, here's 28. Okay, so here is 42. Okay, so to do this like 46, okay, 68, and here's okay like this. Okay, so make sure you know how to do these things. So I think I calculated wrong right here. This should be equal to 56. Okay, here's 62, 60. Okay, so make sure you know how to do this kind of thing. Okay. And here, okay, once we talk about monopoly, we are talking about one company in the market. So compared to the pure competition market model, the monopoly company, they actually have some power. Okay, because if the company, okay, if the employee want to find a job, okay, a specific job in this industry, there's only one company they can work for. So the employer have the buying power. Okay. So which means the company, they are the wage makers. The company have some characteristic, have some power to make the wage. A very good example of the monopoly employee, in my opinion, is, let me think about a very good example. What would be a very good example for the monopoly company? It's the same, okay? The monopoly and monopoly is the same. It's just in a different way, okay? No, actually, Google employee is not. Google employee, for example, the Google, they actually, okay, this is what we talk about, computer science or the IT guy, okay? So if you work for Google and if you work for Google and you fired by Google, you can easily to find a job in Microsoft or Amazon, okay? Because they're gonna hire the same type of employee. What would be a very good example for the monopoly company? Government, I don't think so. I mean, if you talk about a specific government, for example, I don't think. But for example, if you are learning some very good major, for example, not very good major, I'm sorry, a very evil major like the political science, the political science. So if you want to become a political in the future, okay, so maybe government will be a good example for this kind of thing. But what I think in mind right now, the monopoly company, why I want to talk about, probably it will be the professional sport team. Some students, they may have a little bit confused why the sport team like the NBA and NFL, they are the monopoly company. The reason is, just imagine that you are Tom Brady, okay? For example, imagine that you are Tom Brady. After you get, for example, if you get fired by the New England, for example, but that's not the choice. Tom Brady did not get fired by New England. He chose to quit New England. But however, for a professional football player like Tom Brady, is there any other industry he will consider to join for another industry? No, right? Because he's a football player. The only industry he can go to is the football. So for Tom Brady as a professional football player, okay, so all the professional team is pretty much like the monopoly company, okay? He can only work for the professional football team. Okay, the same thing like the NBA, okay? For example, I don't watch NBA anymore. So for example, you are James, okay? James Brown, okay? So if you want to switch your team, you cannot change from your NBA to MWF. That makes no sense, right? If you're a basketball player, you cannot say, okay, I quit basketball, I want to play football. That makes no sense. You cannot choose that. You can only, once you are a basketball player, you have to play for the basketball for a longer time. So in this case, the characteristic for the monopoly company right here, you will see the monopoly company, because they're the only company that hire this specific labor. Another good thing, actually, I want to think about these things because we are in Norfolk, okay? Because we are in Norfolk, okay? And you know, Norfolk is famous for what? Famous for its navy, right? So if you see a lot of people, see some book talk about the Navy, the very special force Navy is called the SEAL. Okay, so SEAL, okay, it's pretty much, okay, I think this is the SEAL, the special force, will be the very good example for the monopoly company. It's not a company, but the way they hire people or the way they train people like the monopoly. Because for the people who work for the SEAL, after they retire, okay, I don't think, so you will see there's a lot of books talk about the retired people from the SEAL, okay? They have a lot of issue after they retire. They cannot find a job. They don't have enough money. You see a lot of veterans that they actually retire from the special force. They have a hard time to adjusting their life after the retirement. And if you know that the SEAL actually, they did not pay you very, very high, because the money they actually pay for to train you is already high. So the salary for the SEAL is actually very, very low. I actually know a friend, okay, at my church, who actually used to be a SEAL member. His teammate is actually the one who go to kill Bin Laden, you know, back in 2009, I forgot, back in 2015 or 16. Again, after they get retired, it's very hard for them to find a very secure job, because they are trained to be a special force. Okay, so the company, okay, so this is another example I'm thinking right now. Talk about the monopoly monkey model right here. So again, okay, this is just an example. I'm not going to test you anything from here. The only thing I'm going to test you is under the monopoly market model, the firm is a wage maker. The company have some power to decide the price, the wage for the employee. Okay. And the upsloping labor supply to firm is they have to pay higher wage rate to attract more labor. And higher wage rate, you need to pay all labor employed. Okay. So in here, so this is the monopoly market model when we talk about the monopoly market model. So we have our quantity of the labor supply right here, and we have the wage rate right here. So as you see, the wage rate in monopoly, okay, is different. Okay, the wage rate will be increased, okay, after you hire more people. Okay, so the total labor cost will be also increased, and the marginal resource cost will be also increased. So compared to the figure when we talk about before, compared to the figure in pure competition market model, if you still remember, in the pure competition market model, the wage rate will be exactly the same. So if we compare this picture to this picture, you will see for the pure competition market model, the wage rate is exactly the same. But however, for the monopoly, the wage rate will be different. So make sure you know that the wage rate will be decreased for the monopoly increase for the monopoly company. In order to hire more employee, okay, the employer needs to increase their wage rate to hire more. So the total labor cost will be increased. So our marginal resource cost will be going to increase. So how are we going to decide, okay, what will be the wage rate and what will be the quantity of the labor for the monopoly company decide to hire, or what will be the wage rate for the monopoly company need to decide? So this is actually very important. The way we're going to decide for the price of the quantity and the wage for the labor and the quantity for the labor is pretty much the same thing when we talk about for the pure competition and monopoly product demand. If you still remember, when we talk about the monopoly, one second, let me go to find that thing. Okay, so the way we use, where's that? One second. Huh. I think I lost my. Anyway. Oh my. Okay, so again, the way we use to find the wage rate and the quantity of the labor is pretty much the same as what we talk about in the product for the labor, product demand and the price for the monopoly company. And this is when we talk about the monopoly companies for the product. Okay, so in this case, this is when we talk about product. In order to find out the equilibrium product, we find out when our marginal revenue and marginal cost intersect right here. So this is our quantity of the product. We already spend a lot of time right here. Now, how can we make sure, okay, what will be, so the quantity will be equal to 10. How are we going to decide what will be the price? So in this case, you will find out that we need to find out to go up to find the intercept point with the demand curve, and the price is right here. So the price it will be equal to 12. And this is for the product. On the other side, in order to find out what will be the demand for the labor, is a little bit different in this picture right here. So it's a little bit different. So for the pure competition market model, you don't need to worry anything. You just need to find the intercept point right here. So this is for the pure competition market model. But however, for the monopoly, you will see this is a little bit different. So for the monopoly, once we find the intercept point with our marginal revenue cost and the marginal revenue product, marginal resource cost and marginal revenue product, we find the intercept point right here. The same thing as what we do before is we go down to find the quantity. Okay, once you set out the quantity, you need to find out that what will be the intercept point with your supply curve right here. Okay, so instead of you pay the wage at this point, you pay the wage at this point. Okay, so this is actually the wage for the monopoly. So you will see, compared to the pure competition market model, the wage for the monopoly will be lower. Okay, so this is the major difference. Okay, as what we talked about before. Okay, how are we gonna to clear this thing? 1 second. Okay. So this is the major difference as what we talked about before. If we talk about for the product, so this is the product, you do need to know that. The product, you will see the average total cost and average variable cost. But however, for the labor, you will only see 3 curves right here. And for the product, once you find the intercept point, you go to find the supply, or you go to find the intercept point with the demand curve. But however, for the labor, once you find the intercept point, you're going to find the intercept point with the supply curve. So this is very different. Whenever we talk about the product, okay, because the company needs to producing their product based on the demand of the product. And on the other side, whenever we talk about labor, the company needs to think about how many labor in the market. So they need to find out what will be the total supply of the labor. So once you find the intercept point, you need to go down to find the intercept point with the supply curve in order to find out what will be the wage for the supply. Okay, this is very important. Okay, so once you know that, you will know that the monopoly company, they will pay a lower wage rate compared to the pure competition market model. Okay, so the example of the monopoly power, like the nurse, the professional athlete, okay, and the teachers. How is C wage rate is not A? What's that C? How is C the wage rate and not A? It's A, right? No, if we talk about wage C, that's for wage pure competition market model. So you just directly find the intercept point. So your wage for the pure competition market model is exactly at A point right here. And your quantity for the pure competition market model is exactly at A point here. But however, whenever we talk about monopoly, you find the intercept point right here at the C point here. Okay, so the wage rate for the monopoly is at here, the wage of the monopoly right here, not this one, it's right here. Okay, so if you compare our wage monopoly to wage pure competition market model, you will see our monopoly will pay a lower wage rate. Some students, they may say, okay, the example you gave right here, for example, the nurse. Okay, for example, the nurse and the professional athlete, their wage rate is actually higher, much higher compared to the pure competition industry. But however, you cannot compete industry to industry. Okay, so for example, we cannot compare nurse to like the clerk. Okay, you cannot compare different industry to different industry, right? So compared to nurse, okay, so for example, if you study getting your nurse degree at EVMS, okay, the salary you got at the very beginning is relatively low for your 8-year investment. And some students, they think about the professional athlete, okay, they say, okay, the professional athlete for the NBA player and NFL player, they actually get much higher wage. But we are only talking about the very famous player. Okay, so for example, so if we think the same NFL team compared to the very famous people like the Tom Brady, who can earn very high, and you compare his salary to the other same teammate in the same team, but it's not very famous, you will see Tom Brady probably earned 1,000 times of the wage rate compared to the other infamous player. So So you will see the wage rate is a little so unfair for the monopoly right here. Okay, so you cannot say, okay, the professional athlete they actually get higher pay. You know the professional athlete, the player, they get higher pay because they are famous. But imagine if you are not very famous, you only get very lower pay. For example, I don't know whether you guys know Jeremy Lin. Who is a Asian NBA player who used to play for the New York Knicks. Okay, and I'm a huge fan of him. Okay, actually, you know that back in 15 years ago, Jeremy Lin's family is actually opened a restaurant near ODU. You know that there's a small Chinese restaurant on, I think it's on 42nd Street, that right before the McDonald's is called Lin's Garden. That is actually the restaurant that the Jeremy Lin's family opened back in 15 years ago. So again, back in his story, before Jeremy Lin become very famous, okay, he can only earn like 250,000 per year for him to play for that NBA team right there, and he get the lowest pay because he's not famous enough. And once he get famous, his salary going to increase, of course, because they can get more like the advertisement, those kind of thing. But anyway, so this is just giving you an example of the monopoly power right here. Okay, I think I'm going to stop here. We're going to finish the rest of this chapter on Friday. So I'm going to see you on Friday. Okay, we actually don't have a lot to cover in this chapter on Friday. Majorly, we're just going to go through some practice questions and make sure that you spend some time to prepare for the midterm on next Monday and next Wednesday. Okay, do you have any questions? Okay, if you don't have any questions, I'm going to see you on Friday then. Bye-bye.